The ultimate 80s icon is back, and better than ever. With 48 pre-installed games and its signature rainbow colours. This isn't just a replica, it is a work of art. Relive the magic with the Spectrum. In stock now at select retailers. Don't miss out.
Hey there Retro Games fans, this is Andy C from Pieces of 8-Bit. So today we're going to be doing our month with review with the fantastic ZX Spectrum, well, the Spectrum as it's called. Newly released back end of last year, so November time, from Retro Games Ltd. Another fantastic piece of equipment from them. I'm going to be talking a little bit about what it's been like to live with this for a month. So these month with series, basically what I do is I take either a reimagined console or old device or an old console and live with it again for a month. You know, what was it like to have it as a main gaming machine? How was it? What was the experience? Is it worth going back and doing it again? For some of the newer reimagined consoles, it's a bit more of a review of the product itself, so you can decide whether you want to go and buy it. For the older stuff, it's going to be a case of whether it's worth going and seeking it out, or how to get back into that particular console and all of the technology and games associated with it. So, like I say, this one is the Spectrum. For those of you who've been watching the channel, you will know that I've been very excited about this. I was very excited for it to come. I was very excited when I unpackaged it. Lovely boxing and lovely box that it came in, and the user manual looked a bit like the old Crash magazine. Really, really fantastic stuff. Complete with the rubber keys that the Spectrum was very, very famous for. So yes, this is going to be a bit of a rundown of what it's been like. So basically, what I'll do is I'll give you a bit of a history of the Spectrum itself and how it came to be and why it's so important. If you are really interested in more detail on this, I'm also watching, or have watched, something called The Rubber Keyed Wonder. This Blu-ray you can pick up online or anywhere. It's a feature-length documentary about the history of Sinclair, specifically the ZX Spectrum, the games, its influence, all that kind of thing. So if you want a bit more detail, strongly recommend you go and check this out. I will talk about this a little bit more in the next section, about what you can sort of find in there and what to expect as part of the sort of history bit. I'll then talk a little bit about the hardware itself, what it's been like to use, how easy it is to use, how robust it is, the finish, all of those kind of things. I'll talk to you a little bit about the software and the game, so some of the things that I've been playing. I'll pop a little screen up somewhere. Let me see, that would be this side, I think. It's not in any particular order, it's just some snippets of things that I've been doing and games that I've been playing throughout the period. And I'll talk a little bit about the game selection that comes with the device, as well as how you can get yourself some other games on there through USB as well, which is really, really useful. And then I'll summarise and tell you what I thought and whether I think it's worth going out and picking yourself one up. So without any further ado, let's dig straight into a little bit of the background and history of this fabulous device. Yeah, I'll see you there. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the history of the ZX Spectrum. I will talk a little bit about the documentary there. Needless to say that they explain a lot of this in much greater and better detail than I'm ever going to do. But long and short of it, Sir Clive Sinclair, an incredible British visionary, yeah, sadly no longer with us, but he was really the dictionary definition of kind of a crazy inventor, if you like. He came up with some amazing ideas. He was a real visionary. He really pushed the envelope, massive risk taker, and sometimes that paid off and sometimes it didn't. He was probably the closest thing I think we had in the UK to someone like Steve Jobs in terms of influence and innovation, and he was fiercely patriotic. So one of the things that he was very, very keen on doing was ensuring that machines were made in the UK, and until his hand was really forced, it was very difficult for him. He really insisted on things being made here, and it's very difficult for him when that became no longer viable. So yeah, an incredible inventor. He came up with some crazy ideas. The the Sinclair C5, which was sort of an electric bike, which I actually had a go on last year at Retro Revival, a device that was probably way ahead of its time. That sort of device now is a little, you wouldn't seem so out of place in 2025, but in the 1980s everyone just thought it was a bit mad, and it was somewhat limited, but the idea, the concept behind it was incredible. And what Sir Clive Sinclair really wanted ultimately at the very beginning was that he wanted to be able to put technology and devices into the hands of normal people, and you've got to remember at the beginning of the 80s people just didn't have computers at home. They might have a console, typically quite expensive devices to buy. The idea of having an all-purpose computer in your home was largely inaccessible to many people. Its contemporaries, such as the Commodore 64, a lot more expensive. And so what Sir Clive wanted to do was to put in the hands of people nice devices that were usable and functional, but at the right price. And so there were compromises that were made with the ZX Spectrum and its precursors, but ultimately it paid off. The ZX Spectrum was incredibly popular. So it came out in 1982 to much fanfare, and yeah, it was launched at a show at Earl's Court, and people were really excited for it, and it flew off the shelves. They just couldn't make them quick enough. Its predecessors, the ZX80 and the ZX81, really kind of introduced this idea of cheaper computing. The ZX81 was very limited. It was black and white. There wasn't very much you could do with it. But it kind of really set this idea that you could afford something in your home. And the ZX Spectrum, this lovely little device, the design of which was really different. When you think about the early 80s, everything was kind of beige. So this was black. It was very sleek. It was quite small. And for something of the sort of power that the ZX Spectrum had at the time, a device this small was pretty surprising for people. So it was amazing, and I have incredible memories of playing on this, around my friend's house. I didn't own one myself, and the rubber keys and everything else, which ultimately I think people decided really probably wasn't the best user experience design, but from a nostalgia point of view, it is just perfection. So yeah, that's a little bit of the history. So just the reason why I haven't gone into too much depth is because I also picked up the Rubber Keyed Wonder, which is a fantastic documentary about the history of Sinclair and the ZX Spectrum and a lot of the other devices, sort of like leading up to the creation of it, what came before. So there was this really bizarre watch that I didn't know about that Sir Clive created, and there were other devices that came before it. One of the very first pocket calculators. So some really incredible inventions, and it's very interesting to see Sir Clive's thinking and how these things sort of came to be. And I mentioned Steve Jobs before. I think Steve Jobs took some risks, and he was sort of outcast from Apple at certain times, and the story is quite similar, and I think it's just a case of time and place as to the level of success. But Sir Clive Sinclair himself was an incredible visionary, and basically invented, without even necessarily consciously inventing, the games industry in the UK, because it made it so accessible. The ZX Spectrum made games creation so accessible to many companies, and so some of the fantastic titles that you see nowadays, they lend some of their lineage to some of those original games back in the 80s, and that a lot of them were created for the Spectrum or created on the Spectrum. So an incredibly important device, and yeah, that's the history. So if you want to find out more about it, go watch this documentary. It's about an hour and a half, a little over an hour and a half long. It's really fascinating. They got people who were there at the time coming and talking about what it was like to work there, the design, the marketing, the games production, all of those things as well. So it's a great look into that little slice of history, and I think for too long, and I'm just going to say this, I think for too long Sir Clive Sinclair was kind of written off as this kind of mad scientist, and Sinclair went through some really difficult times in the mid 80s, and I think people sort of forgot about that impact. And it wasn't really until a few years ago when he passed away that I think people suddenly realised just what. Obviously, people in the know knew this already, but I think a lot of the country just suddenly realised just what an important person Sir Clive Sinclair was to this country, and you know the multi-billion dollar/pound games industry that we have nowadays here. So yeah, go check this out. Really, really good video, and I'm going to give you a lot more background into the history than I will.
My object is to find people's real needs, to develop products which are of real benefit to people in whatever way, and to do that at a price that they can afford, to do for 10p what anyone can do for £1.
Sir Clive Sinclair, you knew who he was, some great British inventor, but I don't think we sort of realised at the time the significance of what he was innovating in and what it would lead to.
My father was always thinking about the next invention, new ideas. That was where his heart was.
So he wanted to come up with something completely new that everybody would adopt. That's really what his goal was, to have a product that everybody wanted and everybody needed.
Clive was an innovator. You need these people, they're the engines of industry. People that are prepared to take a risk, stick their neck out. And Clive Sinclair was a risk taker in the best way.
I think of him as a boffin who understood what was important to people and how he could bring the future into their lives at a decent price.
One of the strengths of Clive was that he was newsworthy. He was a personality. He was a bit of a maverick. People wanted to know what was he going to say, what was he going to do next.
The Spectrum was there at the time when it was affordable for parents to say, yeah, we can stretch to that.
The Spectrum was ideal. You go to a shop, pick it up, you unbox it, you plug it in.
I thought it was the coolest thing I had ever seen.
The rainbow stripe on the bottom right, it's a thing of absolute beauty. And the Sinclair logo itself, the font, get out of town.
It was just so successful.
The amount of games that we used to get to was just incredible.
Games playing really made the Spectrum the success that it was. To me, it just made it possible to get into computing.
That's the Spectrum experience.
It's one of the few times that I dug my heels in and said, well, we're hiring her or I'm leaving.
When Clive was targeting those early adopters, innovators, he was happiest.
This was cheap, it was in everyone's houses, it was colour, beautiful.
It gave the tools of production to the hands of millions.
So what's the device like? Is it worth picking up? How close to the original design actually is it? So I don't have a ZX Spectrum to compare it to, but I'm going to pick this up again. But you know, I have seen pictures and comparison pictures online, and from what I recall, I mean, this is incredibly faithful to the reproduction. Now, one thing about Retro Games Ltd, you know, they produce the A500 Mini, the VIC-20 Mini, the Commodore 64 Mini. What else? I think there's rumour for 2025 they're going to do a full-size Amiga. Whenever they do these things, they are just clearly they are fans of the original devices, because the attention to detail that goes into the devices and the quality of the finished product is just exceptional every single time. I've got an Amiga 500 Mini, I've got a Commodore 64 Mini. They are both absolutely fantastic devices, yeah, they are just brilliant. And I think it's safe to say that with the Spectrum, they have completely outdone themselves this time. This is obviously a full-size, normal-size recreation of the Spectrum 48K ZX Spectrum, sorry. And obviously it comes with all the mod cons on the back. You've got your USB, you've got your HDMI, and you've got your USB-C power as well on there. So nice and easy to use, very, very easy to set up. Comes with a power button and a home button on the back, something which the original ZX Spectrum did not have, so it didn't have a power button. It came later with a reset button, but it didn't come with a power button, so you had to pull the lead out the back to actually reset it. It's fantastically built. The quality of the product, I cannot get this across to you enough. The quality of the product is exceptional. It feels quality. The keys, the feel of those keys is just for anybody who lived through the 1980s and had the pleasure of playing on one of these things will immediately be transported back 40 years by the feel of these keys on here. They are fantastic. One wonders whether some of the keys will wear out because some of the keys would wear out, the ones that you use all the time. So things like load and the quotation marks one would quite often just wear out. J. It was the J key, which was the shortcut to load, and then you used to do load quotations to load from tape, and so those keys would quite often wear out. I mean, I can't see me using the keyboard a huge amount of times. I have plugged a joystick in and a gamepad into here as well, which, while we're talking about hardware, it doesn't come with a joystick. And actually, a couple of things on that really. One is that for the month with series that I normally do, what I tend to do is put the consoles in the living room and stick them under my TV and live with them for a month, as you would expect. That's the whole idea, is that they sit in there with the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox and the Switch and all those kind of things. But for this, I actually ended up having it here on the TV behind me, because that is generally how how I used to play it was on the floor of my friend's bedroom, and he had a television sitting on the floor and his Spectrum sitting in front of that. That was quite common back in the 80s. I mean, because you tend to use the keyboard on this, it is just easier to have it on a desk. And I am singularly too old to have a TV sitting on the floor, and my wife probably wouldn't appreciate me putting a television on the floor and sitting in front of a Spectrum playing on that. But so it made more sense for it to be in here than sitting on the floor in the living room. That just would seem weird. So that's one thing, and that's okay, because a lot of the games you played, you did generally use the keys. Not a lot of people, not everybody tended to have a joystick. Now in this day and age, it's very easy to lay your hands on any kind of USB controller to plug in the back. The compatibility of this is really good. So I've said this before, I use the USB controllers that come with the PlayStation Classic. I actually find I use those more than the actual PlayStation Classic, so they work quite well on here. Also, the joystick that comes with the C64 Mini will work on here. The gamepad that comes with the A500 Mini will also work on here, so that all works really, really well. They've done a couple of updates to allow for better Kempston joystick support, which sort of translates into better joystick and gamepad support, especially in the side-loaded games on there as well. So from a hardware point of view, really, really good. The actual device itself is fantastic. The box that it came in, really, really good as well. Lovely packaging. Come with a manual that looks like the old Crash magazine. So all in all, from a hardware perspective, really, really good. From a usability perspective, for those of you who are familiar with the Retro Games devices, you'll know that they have sort of a carousel on them. You can actually go into the sort of basic programming mode and load games up that way, but to be honest with you, that's a little bit unnecessary. I think you can do that if you're feeling really nostalgic. You can absolutely go ahead and do that, but you don't need to. So you get the carousel, and they always put some fantastic sort of digitized 80s style retro music on there as well, and it differs from device to device, which is really cool. So and some amazing games on there. So I'm going to forget them, so I'm just going to find the box here. So we had some games that I have been playing, so things like Manic Miner, Ant Attack, what was the other one? Snake Escape, I think it was called. Some really, really fun games to play that come on that list. Excellent, and obviously you can sideload as well. So Yes, so from that point of view, really, really good as well. So really very accessible to get onto the device. In terms of putting your own games on, again, very, very easy. Takes a USB stick. There is a USB style device that looks like sort of styled to fit with this. They are like hen's teeth trying to get hold of those. I do want to get one, but I'm just using a standard USB. You can just format it to FAT32, and then you just check whatever games you want on there that you want to load. There are a few formats that it supports as well. So it supports a .tap format, which is basically stands for tape. And what that will do is that will just load the software directly into memory, and the game will just start instantly. So if you just want to crack on with the game, you can absolutely do that. If you're feeling really nostalgic, what you can do is you can load something like a TZX file, and I think there was another one, might be PZX or something. I can't remember what the other format was, but the two formats that I've typically seen are TZX and TAP. I think there's a Z80 format as well, although I haven't tried that. But the TZX format will basically, it's like the actual tape image, and it will load into the device as though it were a tape, and it will take as long. Yeah, I've done that on a couple of occasions, mainly just to show the kids. I kind of like it. It's kind of cool. And actually, to be honest with you, in this day and age, it didn't take as long as I thought it would. Maybe just because I was a kid, it seemed to take forever, but it didn't take as long as I thought. And that's probably because I'm used to loading a game up. I put the Xbox on earlier to load the DVD in, and it needed an update, and it took like 15 minutes anyway. So I'm kind of used to. We're not really loading games any quicker. We're kind of used to this long lead time for games anyway, because every time we put them on, it's like a update of many gigabytes that needs to happen. So, but it's really fun. You know, you get the loading screen. That in itself is you know, a piece of art and something which we always look forward to, and we kind of judged whether we thought the game was going to be any good on the strength of what the loading screen would look like. So so that's all really cool. So really easy to load, and when you plug a USB in, it'll recognise it. You'll see the USB pop up on the carousel. You go into it, and it's got a little navigator. You'll generally need the keys for it. It is just a bit easier to move around. Yeah, you can just, you know, put things into some semblance of order, because there are thousands of games obviously with the ZX Spectrum. So if you're going to put them all on there, order them nicely, and then you can find them nice and easily. You select the game that you want, and then you hit the home button, and it will start the game for you. So yes, excellent. And I suppose the only other thing really to mention on the sort of hardware interface side is the ability to freeze, you know, to save your game state. So I mentioned that I played a game called Snake Escape, and you can basically you hit one of the buttons. I can't remember which one it is, and it pops up it looks like a little retro tape, and you can save the state of the game. And that works for games that you've put on yourself, but also games that are on the device already. So, and it just allows you to come back to it. And for something like Snake Escape, which is a puzzle game where you solved all of the puzzles, it's quite useful, because you don't really have to go through all of that again. You've already solved the puzzle, so you want to just come back and continue with the latest one, which is obviously something that you just weren't able to do back then. And it just makes games that were really, really hard to play a little bit more accessible again. So yes, that's really cool too. So yeah, all in all, really, really impressed with the hardware. Like I say, fantastic to use, really easy to set up and get going with. Yeah, brilliant. So let's talk a little bit about some of the software. Well, I've talked about the software. Let's talk about the games. So let's talk about the games that came with it, and what sort of things I've been playing and how I've found it. See you on the other side. So I've had it sitting here for a month. What kind of things have I been playing? What kind of things have I been doing? Ultimately, well, there's two things you can do, largely. You can, well, let's call it three. Spanish Inquisition. Let's call it three. You can obviously just load the games that are on the device, and you can sideload the games from USB. You can also program, so you can go to the console, you can basically quit out and go to classic mode, and you can actually load and write your own games. I haven't had a go with that, if I'm honest. It is kind of how I started out. I mean, I'm in, you know, my career is in software, and it's kind of how I started out. It wasn't on this; it was on a Dragon 32. But that basic access, and I mean basic as in the programming language, that basic access was so important for many of us getting into these sort of careers early on, and obviously, like I said earlier, it just opened the doors for so many people to get into programming and games development, and made these sorts of devices very accessible. Commodore 64 was very much the same. The Dragon 32 was very much the same. You know, they were very accessible devices in terms of programming. But yes, you can do that. You can absolutely do that. So you can load your own games in, and you can write your own games, or you can just use the games straight off the carousel. So I've been playing a real selection of different things, and I think probably I was concerned that I would play some of these old games, and for many years I've been saying, you know, there's no point in going back and visiting the old 8-bit early 80s games because they just don't have the playability anymore, and they're better off left in the past, and why would you want to go and revisit them? They just won't be any fun. Well, that is a complete load of rubbish. The risk of not swearing here, but they're not like that at all. Now, there are some games that are absolutely unplayable now. You go back and play them, and through modern eyes they are just a real struggle to go and revisit. But there are some games, some absolutely standout classics, which you can go and play again, and they just are fantastic. So some of the games I've been playing, I mentioned Snake Escape earlier, which is a puzzle game where you sort of have to get your snake from one side of the map to another. Not a game I've actually played before, but it comes with the consoles. It's a really good puzzle game. It's a really pretty looking puzzle game as well. It comes with some nice little music in the background. Yeah, you basically just have to get to the apple, and there are certain things you can do. So if you have to sort of stay, you know, if you fall down a hole, basically you get trapped. So you have to sort of plan your route, and it's quite hard. It gets quite challenging. So I've been playing that quite a lot. I've been played Dizzy. I played Fantasy World Dizzy, which is a game that I actually reviewed, I think the PC version, or it might have been the Amiga version, maybe about 6 months ago. I actually pretty much played through the entire game. I got so hooked on it that I went and played it again, and I kind of knew what to do. It's pretty much the same as the other ports of the game as well, but I just really enjoyed playing it on the Spectrum for some reason, even though the graphics were not as good and the sound wasn't as good. I just really enjoyed going back and playing that, so I played that as well. That was really fun. In fact, actually, one of my first memories of gaming generally, actually, but also certainly of the Spectrum, was playing Treasure Island Dizzy on my cousin's Spectrum 48 back in the mid 80s. So would go to their house and we would play on that, and you know, that kind of blew my mind really. It was an incredible game. Just loved playing that. So played a bit of Dizzy. I played what else did I play? But Night Law, which is on behind me at the moment. For some reason it's stopped working. I can't get it to work anymore, so I can get as far as this screen, and then when I actually start the game it doesn't work, but it was working, and I did play it again. And I think probably I was a little bit harsh on my Night Law review. It was one of the first reviews that I did, and I kind of wrote it off a bit, and I was basically playing the BBC B version of it, which is very similar, I have to say, but for some reason I seem to get on better with the Night Law version on the Spectrum. I don't know why, but I did actually quite enjoy going back and playing that again, so that was really fun. Played a couple of races as well. They're quite variable. Some races can be really good. The draw distance is obviously a problem for some of these older races. I played Chase HQ, which is a game I played on my friend's Spectrum Plus 2 back in, well, again, obviously back in the 80s, and really like that. Chase HQ is one of my favourite arcade racer games. So yeah, when I played that, and that is really good. Played Lotus, not so good. That game was almost unplayable. I couldn't get on with that at all. So yes, a real selection of different games. Oh yeah, played Ant Attack. God, that game is so hard. I couldn't get on with that. Played Attic Attack. Not a game I'd actually played before, but a lot of people love. Gone back and played that. That's really playable and really fun again. It's just really confusing as to, you know, I kind of get lost in the dungeon somewhere and I forget where I am. But yeah, that was really good as well. So some amazing games that I played, and some real groundbreakers as well. You know, I mentioned Night Law. Night Law was one of the first sort of isometric, you know, 3D cutaway type games, and you know, that that spawned a lot of games that were very similar to that going forward, which were fantastic. Oh yes, and I must remember as well, I played Jetpack, and I played that quite a lot, and you'll see it in the little clip above how badly I'm doing at that, and I think that's largely down to playing it on a joypad. Don't do that. I'm actually not that bad at Jetpack, but I do. I played it a little bit on the joystick, and I was much better at it. And yeah, Jetpack is an amazing game. And actually, I didn't play that on the Spectrum 48 initially. I played that on the Vic 20. Yes, on the Vic 20. On the Vic 20 with an expansion pack. Yeah, it was a great game. It's practically identical, and that was really fun. But definitely a game to play with the joystick. Great fun to go back and revisit. What else? Pac-Mania. That's nice. That's a really good game, actually, for a device of this age. That sort of 3D cutaway of Pac-Man. When you think about the fact that Pac-Man itself only really came out around the same time as the Spectrum, the ZX Spectrum came out. Pac-Mania, which is a sort of 3D isometric version of it, which came a little bit later, plays really well on this device. I've played it on lots of different devices, and you get lots of different colours and all sorts of things like that. And in fact, actually, Pac-Man 256 definitely has, well, it's a slightly different game, but it definitely has some of those, it just takes you back, has some of those vibes of Pac-Man and Pac-Mania games from way back when. Nice sort of recreation. So yes, I'm kind of waffling now, but I think the long and short of it is that from a gaming perspective, I've really enjoyed it, and there are some games I think that have got longer term appeal, especially some of the puzzle games. I think, you know, you could give those to people nowadays and they would enjoy the sort of 8-bit graphics style and the puzzles, because they are hard puzzles to solve. They're easy to get into in terms of actually how you control them, but they are you know, they are still very playable games. Some of the games like Night Law, I think probably people will struggle with that through modern eyes, but it's a nice nostalgia trip to go back. So yeah, it's great. And I did load 1 or 2 games up the old-fashioned way, just to experience that whole loading screen thing with the colours and the bars and the noises and everything else, which just really takes you back. But for most people who don't remember that, it's probably no point. But I certainly enjoyed doing that myself as well. So from a gaming point of view, excellent. Yeah, really, really good. Some amazing games that come with the device, and of course then you've got access to the entire ZX Spectrum library, you know, that you can pop the games on yourself, and there's loads of stuff out there. You can find loads of archives and other bits and pieces, and you can still go and pick the tapes up. So if you want to own the tapes and you know, before you play the games, you can get yourself out to a computer fair and you can find those relatively easy. Obviously you don't need to use the tapes, but just sort of from a moral perspective, if you feel like you want to own the tape before you play the game, which is not necessarily a bad thing to do, then you know, you can find the tapes around as well. So yes, I did look at a few other little things, like whether you could you know, you could use your iPhone as like a tape device or something like that, but yeah, will be no point on this device, but maybe something on if you've got an original Spectrum you could possibly do. But I thought that might be just a step too far. So the setup that I've got, I'm pretty happy with, to be honest with you. And yes, I can definitely see myself plugging that in and playing a few ZX Spectrum games from time to time when the mood takes me. So yes, from a gaming point of view, really, really good. So let's have a bit of a summary now, and let's talk about what I thought about the device overall. And I think, you know, it's going to be spoilers, right? Spoilers, I like it, right? So let's summarise anyway, and I'll talk to you a little bit about it. Yeah, and we'll leave it there for the day. So yes, I'll see you there. Okay, well, I hope you found that useful. Yeah, I've really enjoyed playing on the Spectrum through the last 4 weeks, and yeah, it's been great. I mean, there's a lot been going on because it's been lead up to Christmas, and so I haven't had as much time to play as I would have liked, but when I have had time to play, I've really enjoyed it, and it's been great to go back and revisit some of those games. So should you go buy one yourself? Well, I think the answer to that question is really, did you live through the Spectrum era yourself? For me, my memories of this, as I mentioned before, is going around to my friend's house or going around to my cousin's house, sitting on the floor and playing on these games and seeing games for the first time. You know, things like Night Law, which was one of the first sort of isometric 3D cutaway games, you know, which just was so influential in terms of, you know, its impact in a lot of the games that followed. Amazing playing that, playing Dizzy for the first time. Some of those games were just incredible, and the Spectrum really holds more nostalgia for me than things like the Commodore. I played that less, I think, through the 80s. So whilst I love games like Impossible Mission on the Commodore 64 and the audio and the full colour and all of those kind of things, for me the Spectrum had more nostalgia. I don't know what it was. It was just, I don't know, probably because I just spent more time on it and I just loved the design of it. And it was different to anything we'd ever seen before. So I really love that, and I really love Retro Games' reinvention of it. It's such a great tribute to the original design of the device. If you want to get one, don't buy from the scalpers. Wait until they come. Retro Games have said that there is more stock coming, so these have been really, really hard to find. So only really buy it from reputable retailers when it's back in stock. It won't be long, so please be patient if you can't find one. So definitely get yourself one. If you didn't come from that era, or you didn't really have anything to do with the Spectrum, you know, if you're more of a Commodore person, or you weren't alive then, or you weren't around, or you were too young, you might not want to think about this. It really depends. I mean, ultimately, if you're interested in the history of gaming, if you're interested in the roots of gaming, especially in the UK, then this is a good device to get, because this is really kind of like this is a pioneer. This is one of the earliest. You know, there was nothing else like this, and Sir Clive Sinclair and the ZX Spectrum had such a profound impact on the UK and our industry, our gaming industry, all those kind of things. So go check it out from that point of view if you're interested, and if you fancy getting into a bit of programming as well, this might be a good device to pick up. You know, obviously BASIC is not something that's particularly widely used nowadays, but it's a great way of kind of learning the basics of programming, and that's certainly how I got into it. So yeah, go check it out if you're interested, and it's just a lovely piece of equipment anyway. I mean, even if you don't end up playing on it very much, it just looks great. It is just a fantastic piece of nostalgia. So yes, I think probably this is definitely going to appeal to people who come from that era, who remember this from that era, for sure. But yeah, I mean, I can't recommend it enough. It is brilliant, and Retro Games Ltd, thank you so much for doing this. I think it is an excellent piece of equipment. So yes, probably not much more to say on it than that, really, other than go out and find yourself one if you really want to, and have a go. So put that down there nice and gently. So yes, coming up then, we will be doing another month with series. I'm really enjoying doing these. I wasn't sure how they would fare, but they've actually turned out to be relatively popular, relatively speaking, as far as my channel's concerned. So next month we're going to be doing the Master System. I was very much in two minds as to whether to do the Game Gear or the Master System. I wanted to do a Sega device. I'm going to save the Dreamcast for a bit later on. I need to get a few more games for that. I will definitely do that though, because I love the Dreamcast. But yeah, I'm going to do the Master System. A couple of issues that I've got, and for anybody who's a die-hard Master System fan, you're going to be a little bit sick in your mouth now, but I only have a Master System 2, which means it comes with... I've got a couple of issues with it. One is that it only outputs RF, which means I can't plug it into the television in the living room, so it's going to be another month of it living in here on this older TV. So I'm going to be plugging it into there, and yeah, I don't have any other outputs on it, and that's fine, and I don't really want to mod it. I'm not... I've generally only got one of everything, so I generally don't really want to mod things. I would like to get an original Master System, but I don't have one at the moment, so it's going to be difficult to do that. I didn't have a lot of games either for the Master System because I'm relatively new to it, but I picked up quite a few games, some bundles off the web, and some bits and pieces from CEX and that kind of thing. So I do have a reasonable selection of games, probably about 15-20 games to play on there as well. I will come back and do the Game Gear later on. I do want to do some handheld reviews because I have quite a lot of handheld devices, and I do love handhelds. Interestingly, actually, slight diversion, but the PSP is 20 years old this year, so that will almost certainly be getting a review soon. probably towards the end of the year. So yeah, keep an eye open for that. You're not going to remember in 9 months' time, but yeah, the PSP will be coming, so do want to do a handheld. But yes, anyway, back to topic. Master System I'll be doing, and that will be sitting in here as the Spectrum did, and running through that. The other issue I've also got with it is the controller. That I've only got one controller for it, doesn't work. The up button has stopped working on the D-pad, so I do need to track myself down another controller. I can start the challenge. I can start the review because it will take a Mega Drive controller, of course. So I can just use that for the time being until I manage to track myself down another Master System controller. But that was kind of annoying because I suddenly realised I couldn't move up on anything, which for some games you don't even necessarily need to straight away. So I didn't spot it initially. But yeah, I do need to get that replaced. So yes, okay, so that's coming up. So that's my next month with Master System, and also coming up in the channel, I've got another Retro Red Steve challenge to do, which is V Rally, which I need to get on and do actually. So we've got another week or two of that left to go now, so I need to get on and do that. And I haven't even played the game yet. And I will also want to be doing a Team 17 thing, so that's probably going to be either next week or the week after, and the reason for that is I'm big fan of Team 17, love the Alien Breed games, but most importantly I loved the Worms games, and it's been such an amazing franchise for so many years because they're just so much fun to play and they're just so silly, and sadly Martin Brown, who was one of the co-founders of Team 17, sadly died. He was only 57. It's really awful. And yeah, such an important gaming house, I think, in the UK. You know, not loads and loads of titles, but the titles that they had were important titles. So I'd love to go back, and I'm probably just going to do a bit of a retrospective of that, and probably play some Worms and do a bit of a review and a bit of a look back on Team 17. So that's going to be probably next week, I think, by the time I get round to it. Yeah, that's probably enough to keep going. So we'll leave it there for the day. So hopefully you found the ZX Spectrum, sorry, not ZX Spectrum, the Spectrum review really, really useful. I hope you're interested and thinking about going to buy one, because I think they're just great. But yeah, I totally understand if you're like, well, this is meaningless to me. But yeah, definitely go check it out, or have a go on one. If you know somebody that's got one, have a go, because it is just a great trip down memory lane. So yes, like I say, hope you found that useful. I'm waffling on now, so I'm going to wrap up. Thanks ever so much for watching. If you enjoy these videos, please do hit that like and that subscribe button. I do really appreciate the feedback. Please do drop some comments down there as well if you'll you know, let me know how you're getting on with the Spectrum, or any tips for the Master System upcoming month with series. Yeah, that's probably it. So yeah, until then, have a great rest of your day, and yeah, take care of yourselves. See you soon. Bye for now.